Hello, everyone. And now we are at part 3 of resilience. So, dealing with this COVID crucible that we are in the midst of. And this is about connection this time, because the reality is that as we try to regain some kind of equilibrium in this new normal, certainly, we have now learned that we are all connected to each other. If we didn't believe it before, I hope we would believe it now, because we are all in this together and each other's actions affect everyone. So remember the 7 C's if you have been with us through this. And we've also talked first about compassion at the 7 a.m. down there. And we talked about compassion for ourselves and others, gratitude, commitment to our personal values, and that the crucible helps hone our metal, that our values, our purpose, and our commitment. And now we are at connection, which is an absolutely essential part of maintaining your way and moving through the crucibles that are in your lives. So let's move on and talk about our journeys. So, we might have had this belief that we're going to just go forward in progress throughout our whole lives, which of course is not what actually happens. And then your life turns out like this. And then we have the COVID business coming in the middle of it. And so the crucible that we're living in, whatever else you were living in and with, now we have the addition of this pandemic and the fear of dying and being infected and all of those things that have changed our lives financially, everything. What I would like to say, though, is that there always will be and always have been crucibles in our lives. And how we deal with them is the way that we will then begin to understand our own grit and create some kind of grace out of the situation. Let's talk about connection. And I want to talk a little bit about my personal story and some of my crucible experiences. And I have never been at the point of starvation, and I've never been homeless. So I'm not an immigrant waiting at a border. So these are first world problems, but I do want to talk a little bit about that, because you don't know what someone has been through and when you see them. But my coaching questions for this whole part on connection is to think about where you find solace and comfort and peace. Maybe it's out in the natural world. I certainly find that. Think about what steps you can take to connect with others to make sure that your safety net is strong and that you can also be a part of someone else's safety net. Think about what supports you need that you don't feel you're getting. And obviously, this is so amazing that we now have social media and I can FaceTime and Zoom with my grandchildren and all of that I couldn't have done, years before. So we have these connections that we can use to help, even if we can't be there to be in person with them. Think about how to use those. And then there are available resources, mental health resources out there that you can connect with if you need to. And we all should identify what we ourselves need. You are not alone. You are not alone. And there are many ways that other people might also be looking for you to reach out to them. One of the ways we connect, though, are with our stories, our personal stories about how this COVID crisis is affecting us. So I want to start with one of my personal stories. And so here I am as a little child, and this is my brother Larry. And so I want to talk about one short period of my life, which is about 1.5 years of my life, one of my hardest crucibles that I've been in. And this particular brother was 10 years older than I am, and he died at age 40 of cancer. Well, during that death period, it turned out that my husband was having an affair with the babysitter. And during that divorce period, as I came back from the funeral, I realized that at one point he had my eldest son and was missing, and when there was a court date. So I didn't know if I would ever see my son again. I was pregnant, single parent with 2 kids. Luckily, I had a very good job. Um, but during that period, also, one of my friends died suddenly at age 30. I had some harassment at work, and we were in the beginning of the AIDS crisis and the AIDS epidemic, and we had infectious disease patients, of course, on our unit in our department. And that certainly gave me a sense of renewed purpose every day. Also, though, what was almost the last straw is that my house was broken into by an armed robber in the middle of the night when I was there alone with my two babies. And that was a point at which my mom, who I reached out to for connection, said, look, you must be strong. You must live through this. So the connections will support you. They are the people that are there for you when you need to hear those things. So there's my mom in the middle. And you can see she's holding my two lovely nieces and my brother's daughters, in fact. And then in the background is my grandmother. And I still feel them. I still feel my mother and my grandmother there saying, hey, you can do this. So there are some skills that we need to develop if you don't have them already for connecting with others. One of them is visioning what could be the best in all possible worlds, and think about your personal needs. What are you missing? What is it that you just, for me being, one of the reasons I'm doing this is because I'm such an extrovert and it's driving me nuts not to be going to hospitals working with you. Anyway, so visioning, what could be the best of all possible worlds. And then think about the connections that you have, those webs, the safety net that support you and sustain you. And figure out how you can continue to have more time or somehow to be sure that you are there for them and they are there for you. And it is possible that this is a beautiful statement, I think. The future enters into us in order to transform itself in us long before it happens. So you're visioning, thinking about your connections. Those are ways that will help give you peace and support you through this horrible, difficult process that we're in. And the last thing is storytelling. And I told you a story about me. And I don't know what that did for you, except it may have identified for you what someone that you know has been through and how they transformed through that, or what they learned from that. I didn't share all my learnings from it. I'm still learning from all of these things. But the story has power in it. And Christina Baldwin, if you haven't read her book on Storycatcher, it's so important because this is the way we pass on our values to our next generation. This is the way we pass on who we are as a people by the stories that we tell. And these are my grandmother in the very bottom of that picture she had 15 children on the prairies of North Dakota, and that is those are part of the children in 1915. And I'm not sure if that's their house in Accra. I'm not sure in North Dakota, but the context of the way they lived and what they had to go through gives me strength. And that context, understanding their lived experience in a way that helps me inform my experience, is a force for healing, I think. So this is our story. This is my family story. And this is a text that I had sent to my niece at one point when she was having a tough time. And she sent it back to me in a plaque that we have on the wall. And I'm sure she rearranged it a bit, but this is my story. So if you hadn't heard it, now you're hearing it. The Bernhoft Ralston women and men are tough. We are resilient. We are the descendants of pioneer women who lived in sod huts and gave birth during tornadoes. They lived without any creature comforts, but they loved their families and fed them well. Grandma Irene raised boys during World War II, not knowing if Grandpa would live through it, and through the women's rights movement. And she had to send her son to Vietnam. Yes, we are tough. And frankly, don't with us. So that was our story. And so maybe this is another part of our story, that perhaps all these dragons in our lives are princesses who are only waiting to see us once beautiful and brave. So we've talked about connections now. We've compassion for ourselves, gratitude that we can name the feelings and offer them, commitment, our values, our purpose, and then connection. We are all connected. And how do we make sure that we have the connections that we need to thrive through the difficult times? Join us for the next discussion, which will be on curiosity. If you have any questions, you can contact us here.